Hi, it's Steve from PartSelect. Today we're going to show you how to change the condenser fan motor on your refrigerator, and it's a really easy job. All we're going to need is a number 2 Phillips screwdriver and a short number 2 Phillips screwdriver, a long straight blade screwdriver, and a pair of side cutters. Let me show you how we do it. Now before we begin this repair, we will want to disconnect power to the refrigerator, and we'll also want to pull it away from the wall so that we can access the back. Now our first step will be to remove the back panel. It's held in place with 7 Phillips screws. So we'll remove all those around the perimeter. And then just tilt that panel forward, lift up on it, and remove it. Now next we'll want to remove this shield around the motor and fan blade to get that out of the way. And it's probably easier to pop the fan blade off first. Just gently pry that fan blade off while supporting the motor. Remove that single screw, pulls that bracket to the back of the refrigerator. And then under the bottom edge here there's a couple of locking tabs that we'll want to release. Just pry out on them. There's another one at the very back. And lift the bracket up and remove it. You have 3 locating tabs in the middle and 2 locking tabs on the ends. Remove the blade. And locate the wire harness. And we'll cut those 2 wire ties off. And just pull that shield back enough that we can depress the locking tab and disconnect it from the harness. Now to remove the motor from the mount, we'll need to remove these 2 Phillips screws. It's a little bit tight there, so you'll need a short, stubby Phillips screwdriver. And if you can't find one short enough, you may need to take a socket style Phillips bit and put on the end of that with a ratchet. Now the ends of these fins are fairly sharp, so be careful when you're reaching in there to get that back screw out. Once we've got those screws out far enough to pull the back of that motor bracket free of them, and then reach in, pull that motor up from the back side, there's a slot along the front that will allow us to lift that straight out. Now the harness typically is wrapped around the base, and you may need to take the flat blade screwdriver and just gently pull that enough that you can gain some excess. And just tuck that down the bottom of that motor mounting bracket. And then we can lift that motor free. There are some rubber bushings that are on the old motor that we'll need to retain, both the front and the rear. So remove both of those. to install on the new motor. Now when installing the new motor, we'll slide that protective covering off first. And then we're going to route that harness through that opening at the back of the motor mount. And then we'll pull it up through the same area where the original one was. And just push that connector up through the opening. Then we can install the rubber mounts. So there'll be one across the shaft on the front. Make sure it's pressed firmly up against the motor. And then one on the rear that sits over that hub at the back of the motor. I'll tilt that housing back and press it down into place. Make sure that the rubber bushings sit into the openings. Now we can tighten the screws again. Now next we can reconnect the wire harness. We'll slide that protective sleeve down over the harness. Line up the locking tab, make sure it's fully inserted and the tab engages. And we can pull that protective sleeve up and either put some new wire ties on there or some electrical tape to hold that in place. And trim off any excess. And then tuck the harness back out of the way. Next, we'll put the bracket back into position. Put the tapered end in first, sliding it over top of that motor shaft. And then we'll line up those locating tabs on the bottom with the 3 holes in the base and just gently bend the top of that bracket over to allow us the room we need. And reach in and press down on the back and front to make sure that those locking tabs engage. We can next reinstall the fan blade. So we'll slide that over the end of the shaft. And then while supporting the motor from behind, push that blade on until it centers up with that bracket. And we'll line up the top of that bracket, secure it with the screw, check that there is no interference between the blade and that bracket. And now we can put the back panel on. Now there are two tabs on the bottom of this back panel that will engage across the base frame. So make sure those hook on there first. And tilt it forward and line up the center screw at the top. And tighten all the screws securely. And then we can push the refrigerator back into position. We're ready to reconnect the power, and our repair is complete. I told you it was an easy job. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your repair.